Welcome, dear listeners, to another chilling episode of our scary stories. I'm your host, inviting you to join me as we descend into the crypt of unsettling tales and forgotten nightmares. Tonight, we journey to New England, to an old tavern steeped in history, sorrow, and chilling secrets. Hidden beneath its welcoming facade lies a basement, a place where laughter and merriment are swallowed by cold stone walls, replaced by the echo of sorrowful cries and tortured moans. It's a tale of restless spirits, of haunting cries that carry tales of a tragic past, of owners battling spectral tormentors and seeking redemption for the wronged. So, turn down the lights, wrap yourself in a blanket of darkness, and let's venture into the horrifying depths of the Wailing Basement. In the heart of a small New England town nestled amidst a wild, untamed forest, Emma and Jack Weller stood before their new venture, an age-old tavern. This historical structure, ripe with age and stories whispered on the wind, was beautifully intimidating. Its exterior bore an uncanny resemblance to an old sepia photograph, weathered and timeless, the wooden sidings darkened by time and stormy weathers. As they pushed the heavy oak doors open, a musty scent, familiar to old structures, filled their nostrils, intertwined with faint notes of long-forgotten ale and wood smoke. This aroma was an echo of the tavern's vibrant past, a past that could be felt within the tavern's very walls. Shadows from the past danced in the corners, ghostly regulars who never left. Inside, the tavern was like stepping back in time. The worn-out hardwood floors creaked under their weight, whispering untold tales with each step. The rugged charm of the vintage bar counter, crafted from cherrywood, stood testament to countless tales of joy, sorrow, and revelry. Bottles, their labels faded and peeling, lined the dust-laden shelves, and the seats still bore the imprints of their last patrons. Off to one side, a cast-iron spiral staircase descended into darkness. This was the entrance to the tavern's infamous basement, an enigma that added a layer of chilling fascination to their new property. The very mention of it caused a chill to spider web its way up their spines. Jack cast a wary glance down the shadow-veiled staircase. His heart drummed against his ribcage, the rhythm echoing in the silence of the tavern. A shudder passed through him, as if the basement itself beckoned him towards it, whispering tales of sorrow and agony that emanated from its depths. Emma placed a comforting hand on Jack's shoulder, her gaze lingering on the staircase. "There's a history here, Jack," she whispered, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Can you feel it?" Jack nodded, his throat dry. "Yeah, it's like the very air is heavy with it." Suddenly, a low moan echoed up from the depths of the basement, a ghostly wail that made their blood run cold. They froze, their breath hitched in their throats. A moment of stunned silence passed between them, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Emma broke the silence first. "Maybe it's just the wind or the old plumbing," she suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. Jack looked at her, then back at the staircase. His mind raced, unable to dispel the chilling cry that now echoed in his memory. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of the terrifying journey that awaited them within the haunting depths of their new tavern's basement. The relic tavern had secrets it yearned to tell, stories embedded within the damp stones of the basement that were eager to be set free. Days turned into weeks as Emma and Jack began to settle into their new roles as owners of the old tavern. The work was tedious and exhausting. Scrubbing off years of dust and grime, sanding down the aged bar, and replacing creaking floorboards filled their days with relentless labor. However, there was an undercurrent of unease that threaded its way through their daily routine. Their nights were plagued with a symphony of unsettling sounds emanating from the basement, cries muffled by the thick stone walls, the agonized moans that seemed to pierce the silence just as they were about to fall asleep. Despite the goosebumps that these uncanny sounds raised on their skin, they dismissed it as their minds playing tricks. It was easy to let imagination run wild in an old, creaky building, they reasoned. The rustling of the wind outside, or the house settling on its ancient foundations, could explain these eerie disruptions. One evening, while they were seated at the bar, a chilling wail shattered the peaceful silence, causing the air to turn frosty. Emma gasped and clutched Jack's arm. The sound was inhuman, filled with such pain and despair that it left a dreadful lump in their throats. With his heart pounding against his chest like a trapped bird, Jack rose from his stool and tentatively approached the foreboding staircase. He peered into the abyss, the shadows seeming to writhe and twist beneath his gaze. But nothing more than the stale, earthy smell of damp stone and aged wood met him. No spectral apparition, no source of the terrible sounds that made their skin prickle with fear. The next morning, they agreed that it was time to seek professional help. Jack decided to call a local plumber, hoping that the pipes were the culprits behind these terrifying nocturnal disturbances. As he dialed the number, he could feel the weight of Emma's worried gaze on him. Their relief was palpable when the plumber, a burly man named Thomas, arrived with his toolkit. Little did they know, the secrets of the basement were not ready to be revealed so easily. Thomas disappeared into the depths of the basement, leaving Emma and Jack in a tense silence, waiting for the reassuring confirmation that their fears were merely a result of old plumbing. As minutes stretched into hours, the couple grew restless. Emma wrung her hands together, her nervous gaze flicking to the clock every so often. Jack paced the length of the room, his brow furrowed in worry. Their hearts jumped when Thomas finally reemerged from the basement, his expression a mask of confusion and uncertainty. The chill that his words would send down their spines would be far colder than any draft from the basement. "There's no issue with the plumbing," he admitted, his voice hesitant. "But I've heard stories about this place." And as he recounted the ghastly tale that his grandfather once told him about the Wailing Basement, Emma and Jack could no longer deny the chilling reality of their situation. This was more than just a simple issue with the plumbing. They were dealing with something far more terrifying. A haunting resonance of the tavern's dark past that refused to be forgotten. As Thomas, the gruff local plumber, regaled the chilling story passed down from his grandfather, Emma and Jack found themselves hanging on to every word, their hearts echoing the dread-infused rhythm of the narrative. Once a bustling hub of the town, the tavern had a darker history. A barmaid, young and beloved, had been ruthlessly murdered, her life extinguished in the cold, unforgiving basement. The suspect, a regular patron known for his volatile nature, was never convicted. The tale was an echo from a time when justice seemed to favor the wicked, a dreadful relic of an unkind era. "So they say her cries still echo through the basement," Thomas concluded, his face a mirror to the goosebumps crawling up their spines. Emma and Jack glanced at each other, their faces pale in the low light of the tavern. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the distant howling of the wind outside. They could no longer dismiss the nightly disturbances as just old pipes or drafts. That night, they lay wide awake in their bed upstairs, the haunting tale fresh in their minds. They jumped at every creak of the old floorboards, every rustling of the ancient walls. The sounds from the basement were no longer just noises. They had transformed into cries of desperation, echoes of an untold story, a plea for justice from a time long gone. As the hours rolled by, the wails intensified, each one a chilling symphony of pain and torment. The ghostly moans seemed to rise and fall with the gusts of wind that rattled the tavern, a mournful melody that filled every corner of the room. With their hearts pounding in their chests, Emma and Jack made a decision. They had to confront whatever dwelled in their basement. There was a story yearning to be heard, a cry for help from the shadowy depths of their new property. As the dawn approached, they decided to seek the assistance of a medium. They needed to reach out to the distressed soul, hoping to provide some closure, and hopefully find peace for themselves in the restless spirit. Little did they know they were not dealing with just one lost soul. As they would soon discover, another spectral presence lurked in the chilling darkness of the basement, a malicious entity whose deeds had been etched into the stones of the tavern's foundation. The spirit of the murderer, filled with wicked delight, was waiting for its chance to strike, growing stronger with each passing night. Emma and Jack decided to seek help from beyond their realm of understanding. A local woman, Agnes, was known for her ability to communicate with spirits. She was a psychic medium, a bridge between the living and the dead. Though both were skeptics, their fear of the unknown and the desperation to restore peace to their tavern led them to Agnes's doorstep. Agnes lived on the outskirts of town, her quaint cottage shrouded in a mix of eerie silence and tranquil serenity. Her garden was filled with a chaotic beauty of herbs and flowers, their fragrant scents wafting through the air, offering an unexpected calmness amidst the impending dread. Agnes, a woman of old age but with a fiery spirit, listened to their story with a solemn expression. Her wise eyes flickered with understanding, perhaps even expectation, as though she had been waiting for this tale to find its way to her. As they followed Agnes back to the tavern, the sun began to set, painting the sky with a multitude of colors. The ethereal beauty of the sunset did little to quell the anxiety that churned in their stomachs. With a small bag of tools in her unyielding spirit, Agnes entered the tavern, her footsteps firm on the creaky floorboards. The atmosphere seemed to change as if the tavern itself recognized the authority she carried. As they descended into the dank, chilling basement, the air grew colder, more oppressive. Emma and Jack watched, wide-eyed, as Agnes set up her space, lighting candles, spreading a circle of salt, and placing a worn, antique locket in the center. Agnes's voice echoed through the basement, her words strange and fluid as she began to speak in an ancient language. Emma clung to Jack's arm, her body rigid with tension, while Jack stood, his eyes fixed on Agnes's face that had taken on an eerie calm. Suddenly, a frigid gust swept through the basement, extinguishing the candles. The darkness around them seemed to pulsate, becoming more tangible. A soft moan echoed through the silence, growing in volume until it became a mournful wail that reverberated off the stone walls. Then another sound joined in, a low, menacing growl that curled around the despair-filled wails. It was an eerie duet of torment and malevolence, a chilling testament to the spectral entities that called the basement their eternal home. The sorrowful barmaid, trapped in her afterlife, and her murderer, the source of her eternal agony. Shivering, yet bolstered by Agnes's unwavering stance, Emma and Jack stood their ground. Their hearts pounded in their chests, their breaths coming in short gasps. Yet they knew they couldn't back down now. The time to face the spirits, to uncover the full narrative of their haunting cries, was upon them. The tavern had a story to tell, and it was not going to hold back any longer. As the spectral wailing and growling reverberated through the damp, stone-cold basement, Emma and Jack clung to each other, their fear for the dark entity in the pitch-black room. Agnes, unmoved by the chilling spectral concert, began to speak again, her voice steady and clear. "Spirits, we come not to banish you but to understand your pain," she started, her words slicing through the icy tension. "Reveal to us your story, let us bring peace to your restless souls." Slowly, the wailing subsided, replaced by a thin, ghostly voice, trembling with despair and desperation. The voice spoke of a young life cut short, of dreams unfulfilled. It told a story of love and betrayal, of a trusted patron whose jealousy and rage had taken a deadly turn. Emma and Jack listened, their hearts heavy with the sorrow that painted the spectral tale. The ghostly voice, the murdered barmaids, they realized, filled the room with a melancholic melody, her words a lamentation of the life she had been robbed of. Suddenly, another voice, dark and sinister, snaked its way into the narrative. The voice of the murderer, brazen and unrepentant, his spectral form feeding off the fear that permeated the basement. He gloated about the crime, his chilling laughter echoing off the stone walls. Emma and Jack recoiled, their blood turning to ice. Even in death, the murderer was unrepentant, reveling in the terror he still incited. But Agnes remained undeterred. "You will hold no power here," she declared, her voice echoing in the now silent room. "We will free her from your clutches and ensure you face your deserved justice." The spirits fell silent, their voices retreating into the depths of the basement, leaving an uneasy calm in their wake. Emma, Jack, and Agnes took a moment to absorb the chilling story that had been revealed to them. Their task was now clear. They needed to free the barmaid's soul from the horrifying clasp of her murderer. To do that, they needed to learn more about their history, to delve into the heart of the tragedy that had forever marked the tavern. With a determined look on their faces, they ascended the basement stairs, ready to dive into the past of their new home. As the door to the basement shut behind them, they knew their journey was only just beginning. The Wailing Basement held secrets yet to be discovered, a horrifying past that was yet to be entirely unveiled. As the early morning light poured into the tavern, Emma and Jack, armed with determination and a newfound purpose, began their research into the past. The old tavern, their dream-turned-haunting reality, was a canvas painted with a horrifying tale of love, betrayal, and death. Their first stop was the town's library, a large, sprawling building housing records dating back to the town's inception. Their hands leafed through old newspapers and archives, the smell of ancient paper and ink clinging to their fingers. The articles they found painted a picture of the past that was both tragic and chilling. The victim, named Abigail, was a beautiful, vibrant young woman known for her kindness. The articles detailed her life and her brutal, untimely death, but the murderer's identity was carefully shielded, referred to only as the patron. However, as Emma and Jack dug deeper, they discovered the truth. An article hidden deep within the archives spoke of a wealthy and influential man named Richard Crane who had frequented the tavern during that time. Richard was known for his violent temper and possessiveness over Abigail. Rumors swirled around town, linking him with Abigail's murder. Yet, due to his influence, Richard managed to evade justice. Upon returning to the tavern, Emma and Jack shared their findings with Agnes. They spoke in hushed whispers, fearful of inciting the restless spirits in the basement. Agnes listened attentively, her brows furrowed in thought. "We have the names now, Abigail and Richard," she said, her tone somber. "We can reach out to them more directly. Help Abigail find peace and ensure Richard faces the consequences he evaded in life." The sun began to set as they prepared for another seance. With the truth in their possession, they ventured back into the chilling darkness of the basement. The air was thick with anticipation, the silence humming with latent spectral energy. As they braced themselves for the confrontation, the weight of the horrific past pressing down on them, they felt an odd mix of fear and determination. The cries and moans of the basement's spectral occupants had morphed from spine-chilling disturbances to desperate pleas and defiant taunts. In the cold heart of the Wailing Basement, Emma, Jack, and Agnes prepared to battle the past, to bring peace to the tormented, and deliver long-overdue justice to the wicked. Little did they know, the deepest horrors of the basement were still hidden, waiting to be awakened. In the thick and heavy darkness of the basement, with the scent of damp earth and cold stone around them, Emma, Jack, and Agnes stood in the circle of salt. They could feel the spectral energy humming in the air, a low vibration that made their skin prickle. Agnes began to chant, her words echoing through the narrow confines of the space, winding around the beams and walls until they became a living part of the basement. The candles flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that added to the eerie ambience. "Abigail," Agnes called out, her voice steady and strong. "We know your story, your pain. We seek to help you, to free you from this eternal prison." The response was immediate. A gust of frigid air swooped through the basement, a spectral sigh that made the candles flicker violently. The whispers of a female voice floated in the air, soft and sad, a heartbreaking symphony of lingering regret and longing for peace. "We hear you, Abigail," Jack added, his voice choked with emotion. Emma reached out and squeezed his hand, offering silent support. "We're here for you." Then Agnes turned her attention to the darker presence. "Richard Crane," she called out, a note of steel in her voice. "Your deeds are known. Your wickedness has not been forgotten. It's time for you to face the justice you evaded in life." Suddenly, the temperature dropped even more, and a low growl echoed through the basement. The menacing spirit of Richard made his presence known. An unseen force knocked over the candles, plunging the room into a terrifying darkness. Shadows writhed and moved around them, the spectral growls growing in intensity, transforming into a maddening cacophony of unrepentant anger and defiance. The group held firm, even as fear threatened to overwhelm them. But then, the ground beneath them started to shake, dislodging dust and small stones from the ceiling. A sudden, powerful force pushed against them, scattering the salt circle and threatening to extinguish their only source of light. Despite the chaos, Agnes continued to chant, her voice rising above the angry howls of Richard. Emma and Jack clung onto each other, their hearts pounding in their chests as they weathered the spectral storm. The battle for the souls in the basement was proving to be more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. And yet, they knew they couldn't back down. They had to free Abigail from her torment and hold Richard accountable for his heinous act. The truth had been unveiled, and it was time for the spirits to face their destiny. The Wailing Basement was about to witness a confrontation it hadn't seen in over a century. The battle in the basement raged on, the ethereal fury of Richard's spirit clashing against the unwavering determination of the trio. Emma and Jack, holding on to each other, could feel the air thicken with an unseen but eerie tension, each spectral roar and chilling whisper echoing the torment of the past. Amidst the chaos, Agnes's voice remained steady, her chants echoing through the basement. She called upon ancient forces, her pleas for justice and peace rising above the tumultuous cries of Richard and the sorrowful wails of Abigail. Suddenly, a blinding light burst through the basement, its radiance cutting through the darkness and bringing an eerie silence. Emma and Jack shielded their eyes, and when they dared to look, they saw a spectral figure manifesting before them. It was Abigail, her ethereal form shimmering in the unearthly light. Her eyes, pools of sorrow, met theirs, a silent thank you resonating in her gaze. She looked at Agnes, and then, with a glance of despair and anger, turned to face the spot where Richard's malevolent presence could still be felt. Then came another burst of light, and Richard's spectral form appeared. His ghostly features twisted in a snarl, his eyes burning with a wicked fire that was horrifying to witness. Abigail confronted Richard, her voice resounding through the silent basement. "Your time of torment is over, Richard," she said, her tone steady. "I will no longer be a prisoner of your malevolence." Richard roared, his spectral form quaking with fury, but he couldn't reach Abigail. An unseen force seemed to keep him at bay. Emma, Jack, and Agnes watched in awe as Abigail, now radiant with a light that outshone Richard's darkness, stood up to her murderer. In the chilling confrontation of the spectral forces, the trio felt their fear replaced by a sense of awe and anticipation. The Wailing Basement was no longer just a place of horror. It had become a battleground for justice, a place where the silenced would finally have their voices heard. As the struggle between Abigail and Richard continued, an electrifying tension filled the air. Emma, Jack, and Agnes could only wait and watch, hoping that their actions would finally bring peace to the tormented souls of the Wailing Basement. The tavern shook as Richard's spectral roars echoed through the structure, the horrifying manifestation of his furious stark contrast to Abigail's serene courage. The air was alive with the hum of their spectral energies, creating a maelstrom of invisible forces that spun around the basement in a whirlwind of tormented cries and defiant declarations. Abigail, her ghostly form emanating an ethereal glow, spoke words of forgiveness and farewell to Richard, her voice like a soothing melody slicing through the thunderous roars. Richard's form quivered, his spectral flames dimming slightly under the soothing resonance of her words. Agnes, Emma, and Jack watched this spectacle, awestruck and terrified. Agnes continued her chanting, her voice rising and falling in rhythm with the fluctuating phantom energies. Emma and Jack, their hands entwined, silently offered their support, their hearts aching with sympathy for the wronged spirit. Suddenly, with a final bellow that rattled the stone walls, Richard's spirit began to dissipate, his fierce resistance crumbling under the combined force of Abigail's forgiveness and the Triad's relentless pursuit of justice. His anguished cries slowly faded, replaced by a hum of resignation that echoed through the cavernous basement. With one final, remorse-filled glance at Abigail, Richard's form disintegrated into wisps of grayish smoke, vanishing into the darkness from whence he came. The basement was silent for a moment, the only sound being the ragged breaths of Emma, Jack, and Agnes. Then a soft, melodious sound echoed through the air. Abigail's spirit turned towards the trio, her gaze filled with gratitude. "I'm finally free," her voice resonated, filled with an unimaginable sense of relief. "Thank you." With those words, her form began to dissipate, leaving a trail of shimmering light that slowly faded. The basement, once a hub of wailing sorrow and relentless torment, was silent and peaceful. As the echoes of Abigail's final words faded, Emma, Jack, and Agnes found themselves standing in a changed space. The atmosphere was lighter, the air free of the chilly touch of despair, and the haunting cries of the restless dead. They emerged from the basement, their bodies exhausted, but their hearts filled with a sense of accomplishment. They had faced the horror of the tavern's past and emerged victorious, forever changing the narrative of the Wailing Basement. But as they left the spectral battlefield behind, little did they know that their actions had set in motion events that were yet to unfold. With the morning sun casting long shadows across the tavern, Emma and Jack found themselves standing in a silence that was no longer haunted by the echoes of the past. The cries and wails that once reverberated through the stone walls were gone, replaced by an almost eerie tranquility. The tavern buzzed with an energy of renewal as they began to clean and repair the damage from the supernatural confrontations. The old wooden floorboards, worn and weathered by centuries of patrons, seemed to creak in gratitude, the bar's polished surface reflecting their hopeful smiles. The building that had once seemed a macabre monument to a tragic past was beginning to feel like home. Agnes, with a weary smile on her face, announced that she would be leaving. Her job there was done, but before she left, she gifted Emma and Jack a small pendant, an amulet for protection. They thanked her profusely, grateful for her invaluable guidance through the haunted storm. However, as they waved goodbye to Agnes, an unsettling sensation crept over them. The basement door, standing ajar, seemed to call out to them, a reminder of the horrors they had faced and the victory they had achieved. A lingering unease led them back into the bowels of the tavern, back into the now silent basement. There, they found an old wooden chest, half buried in the dirt floor, that hadn't been there before. Their hearts pounding, they opened it to reveal a set of diaries, and a locket containing a portrait of Abigail. It was a direct link to the tragic past of the tavern, a somber reminder of the tormented spirits that had once roamed its depths. As they flipped through the pages, they discovered that Richard Crane wasn't the only one with a dark past connected to the tavern. There were others whose stories were yet untold, their unrest not yet put to ease. A chill ran down their spines as they realized that their work wasn't done. The Wailing Basement had more secrets to reveal, more spirits to liberate. Even as they looked towards the future, filled with a newfound purpose, the basement's chilling whispers started anew. The echo of sorrowful cries and mournful wails once again filled the tavern, a testament to the haunting legacy of the Wailing Basement and a harbinger of the terrifying trials that were yet to come. Well, dear listeners, we've come to the end of tonight's eerie journey. We've stood witness to ghostly confrontations, felt the chill of remorseful spirits, and followed a tale of redemption born from the echoes of a tortured past. But remember, every creaking floorboard, every whisper of the wind, may be hiding its own spectral secret. As for the Wailing Basement, its chilling whispers and sorrowful cries continue, a grim symphony of tales yet untold, of spirits yet unrested. Until our next chilling journey, keep your eyes open, your hearts brave, and remember, there's a scary story waiting where you least expect it. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.